lot of people ask me whether I had a landscape architect help design it and help build it and so on. No, it's something I did myself. There's a lot of hiding places for the koi and keep the rocks quite clean from the algae. I wanted to have the stream come around here as well as having more of the main stream over there. I wanted to continue on with rock gardening. Had a little more room here in this backyard to do a much bigger project with rock gardening. Starting from about the early 1980s, wanting to have a general area here with some water features. I knew right where I'm standing now it would be a patio just to be able to come out here and have dinner outside or breakfast or lunch or whatever, and wanting to have the main pond kind of close to that patio area. So that was the first part of the vision. And then the vision of somewhere higher up having a kind of an alpine pond, and then some waterfalls and streams coming down from there. I was interested in creating what seemed like a canyon or a valley, and that's what these two rocks are here. And then so we have a intermediate pond in between these two rocks. These two rocks are the first ones that I bought for the garden. One here and one there. That's about 4 tons, and this is about 3 tons. So I had those brought in place, and there was nothing dug out for a pond or anything, but at least I would put them in a general area where I wanted to have the pond, and then slowly start finding rocks to build up other areas for the upper pond and the stream. It was over a period of many years bringing in these rocks and placing them where I wanted them, but still not having dug out for the stream or the ponds yet. Once all the rocks were there, then I said, well, okay, we can now dig out for the stream and the ponds, but we got to move some of the rocks that will be partially in the water. So I had to have the crane come out and pick up some of these rocks, like these large rocks, and 3 or 4 of the other ones up there, and several of the rocks around the pond, pick them up and set them aside. Then go in and dig out for the pond and the stream, and bring in a rubber liner that's about a 1/16 of an inch thick, and line everything with that rubber liner, and then have the crane come back and place the rocks on top of the rubber liner. And it's pretty tricky doing the construction of the pond and the waterfalls to make sure that your rubber liner is always up high enough in the right places that you don't get water overflowing the liner or creating a leak in the pond. I've been fortunate that so far that there's been no leak in it, as far as I can tell, at least not any significant leak. There is a variation in the amount of water that it uses from spring to winter, with evaporation in the spring and summer. You'll use a little bit more water in the pond and the waterfalls. The pumps for the pond are in a skimmer over here, It skims the water, the top part of the water, so anything floating like leaves or pine cones or spruce cones, whatever, will then float into the skimmer and get trapped in a net. And then there are two pumps in here, one for summertime use, like that's turned on now, that pumps the water from here up to that upper pond, and you see all the waterfalls coming down from that upper pond. I shut that off in the wintertime because there's a filter up there that has some parts of it exposed that could freeze and break, so that gets shut off. But in the wintertime, the pond in between those large two rocks, there's water in there. A smaller pump pumps water into that pond that then flows into this larger pond. So you get the circulation. Even though it'll freeze over, you'll get water circulating kind of underneath the ice, provides the air that the koi need. Now the koi will hibernate through the winter, starting in about November, and then they'll come out again in maybe late March. There's a lot of hiding places for the koi. When people come to visit the garden, they see the koi, the one question I get often is, do I have problems with raccoons and herons and so on grabbing the koi? No, I've never lost any koi that way, and there's, I think, two reasons for it. One is they have a lot of hiding places underneath those rocks. You'll see them going up underneath the rock there that you can actually walk on. The water goes clear back underneath that rock, and they can hide back under there. There are several other places underneath the other rocks, so that if they see a raccoon or a cat or something like that coming nearby, they just go hide underneath the rocks. The other thing is the side of the pond is very steep. Instead of what a lot of ponds you'll see made gradually slope in, where it'd be easy for a raccoon to kind of just walk in and be able to grab the fish. But here, in order to get in, they'd almost fall into the water, and they don't tend to like to get into the water. All the plants on this rock right here, except for this, it's a ponderosa pine that came with the rock, but because the roots are in the crack of the rock, it grows extremely slowly. All the other plants, all these ferns that you'll see here, and some of the dwarf spruce, have come up from seed, from ferns, or from the spore from ferns that I have other places in the garden. This rock, since it sits in the water, and it's all the rock are sandstone, there's layers, and the water will tend to seep up through those layers and provide a perfect environment for fern spores once they light on in that kind of a moist area to finally turn into the ferns. Here we have a dwarf rhododendron called Mount Seven Star. I have several of the rhododendrons that are part of the North Tisbury rhododendrons from Massachusetts. Polly Hill was the one there that brought in some rhododendrons from China. Actually, I think maybe from Taiwan, and propagated a lot of them. And I think it's rhododendron Nakahari, various hybrids of that are extremely reliable here in our Colorado garden. This one is relatively new. This is maybe only about 4 or 5 years old. It's doing well. but one I pointed out earlier has been around for 25 or 30 years or so and blooms about every year. Okay, so that one is just starting to come out and bloom. Rhododendron North Star, and here's a pink one. This particular one kind of called Nuki July Rose. Well, so it's a good name. It blooms in about end of June and beginning of July. Pretty much all of these dwarf rhododendrons usually are in bloom on July 4th. Another one in bloom over there, rhododendron Rukizan, a dwarf rhododendron that's been there for 4 or 5 years. One over here, which is the same as the one that you saw earlier, rhododendron Alexander. This one's newer. This has probably been here 5 or 6 years, maybe longer, 6 or 7 years. But the rhododendron Alexander is probably the most reliable one of these dwarf rhododendrons that blooms every year at around the end of June, early July, with an orangish red color. Okay, so you'll see another waterfall here, and the water going underneath a bridge. I found this nice rock that would form a very nice, natural-looking bridge across the stream. So, again, in the design of everything, I wanted to have the stream come around here as well as having more of the main stream over there. And so I have two types of crossings. This crossing is with a natural bridge across that stream to be able to get into the middle part of the garden. And over here to cross this stream, I wanted to make it very natural looking, kind of like if you're out in the mountains and got to get across a stream. Well, you'll find some rock in the stream that you can step on partway across and then finally get across to the other side. I have quite a few Daphne here that they're essentially done blooming now. There happen to be one flower left on it, but the Daphnes tend to bloom in generally in about early May, kind of a pink to purple pink color. And here's more of this desert moss. You'll see that quite a few places in the garden. Well, let me point out one thing that I like to use that desert moss for. I'll show you over here. You'll see the desert moss here. There's sort of two functions for it. One is to look like you're in a natural alpine area, very low growth. So this particular upper pond, I call it alpine pond. All the plants around it are very compact, like you might find above timberline. There's another practical reason. I mentioned you need to have a rubber liner to keep the water from leaking out into the ground. The rubber liner comes up between, up against this rock here, and I hide the liner with this rock, but there's a tendency for that liner to show unless you cover it up well. And so by having this plant in between these two rocks, it hides that liner and provides a very natural look for an alpine area. The water for the pond, it comes up from underneath, under a rock. There is a kind of a plastic fitting that fits waterproof in through the liner itself. And over there you can see where that filter is, the upper filter for the pond that keeps everything very clean. It's got an ultraviolet light in it that will kill any floating algae. The majority of it is from just traveling in the mountains here in Colorado, hiking up in alpine areas above timberline or through woodland areas and so on, of just wanting to create a garden that looked very natural, like you're up in the mountains. And so that's the main goal of the design, is to keep things very natural looking. So instead of having a pond, with very artificial sides just sloping in everywhere, having some of the large rocks actually partially submerged in the pond itself, I think helps to create that kind of a look, more natural look. You'll see some of these spruce here. I did not plant those there. They come from seeds from the blue spruce that I did plant. That one probably around 1980 or so. The seeds from that come up various places. I let them grow for a few years until they get out of scale, and then I just cut them back. The one blue spruce here growing in that rock seems to have a natural dwarf look to it. That's probably been there about 10 to 15 years. Okay, so there's more of these dwarf Japanese cypress, or the Chamaecyparis obtusa. There's various forms of that. Majority of them get to be quite large, but these are very dwarf. Chamaecyparis obtusa nana is one variety. There's a lot of named varieties that stay very dwarf like that will only grow maybe a quarter of an inch each year. And up there near the top, you have a geranium dalmaticum in bloom. So that blooms at kind of a nice time of year when not too many other things are in bloom. Okay, over here we have another one of these dwarf rhododendron, Mount 7 star, it's called, from the North Tisbury hybrids that originated from Taiwan. Originally, my wife said when we had the pond and we didn't have fish in it, she said, well, why don't we get some koi? And at first I was a little bit reluctant, thinking, well, with fish in the pond, it's going to be hard to keep it clean. But actually it turns out it's just the opposite. The fish keep it very clean. In addition to eating the fish food, as long as we don't feed them too much, they'll eat their vegetables, which is the algae that might grow on the rocks. So they eat that and keep the rocks quite clean from the algae. Okay, so I have some water lilies in there that later on in the summer they'll hopefully be out in bloom. The one you see right now is a yellow color, and then the one more in a corner back there with the smaller leaves, that's a kind of a pink, a dark pink color. A cyclamen purpurescens, that's an evergreen. It's the one cyclamen that stays evergreen throughout the year. A lot of cyclamen, one that looks similar to this, will actually go dormant probably during June, and then come out with a flower in July and be kind of evergreen the rest of the year. But this does not go dormant at all. This is a pie-shaped lot in the backyard here, where at the wide part of the pie shape. So I could bring in quite a few rocks, and I wanted to make things kind of dramatic. Having all rocks similar size does not look very interesting. I mean, it's easy to maybe pick up and carry a rock, like maybe the sizes like that. But if they're all kind of the same size, it doesn't look so interesting, as again where you get kind of a contrast between very large rocks and smaller ones. So that process of bringing in all the rocks went on for many, many years, probably from starting in the 1980s to up to about maybe 15 years ago, when I brought in pretty much the last rock. And like I say, the big rocks, they would use a crane from the truck to place the rock where I'd tell them that I would like to have the rock. Over here, you're seeing some rather large rocks. Next to the patio is the largest rock in the rock garden. That one weighs about 7 tons. And it's one that the crane on the truck could not move at a very far distance from the truck itself without tipping the truck over. So this, I was able to have the truck bringing rocks drive up alongside of the garage here and take rocks off of the truck and then place them out in the rock garden. But like I say, this one was too heavy to move out very far. But anyway, I planned it and wanted to have it right next to the patio area, so that worked out fine. Here's some more of this Himalayan maidenhair fern. I have this many different places in the garden. I like it very much. Just a very nice, delicate leaf structure associated with it. There's some other plants here. Here's a dwarf rhododendron that's just beginning to bloom. You'll see over there kind of an orangish red color. That's been quite reliable, except for 2 or 3 years where we had some really strange weather that caused it not to bloom. Quite a few years ago, we had a case where our first frost of the season, like in November or so, it hadn't even got down to freezing before that, but the first one that we got down to -20. And a lot of the plants did not like that. That one, it took a couple years before it really sort of come back again and start blooming. Another plant that had some damage to it, it's a Comiciferous obtusa, a dwarf form of that. Anyway, it had some dieback. It's starting to finally come back. That particular plant is probably about 30 years old. And then over here we have a relatively common campanula that's in bloom, that's again been there probably 20-25 years or so, that does not really spread much. It just covers up some of the rocks, comes back every year, blooms very reliably. Over here is a Japanese maple that has a nice red color in the spring and in the fall. In the summer it's more of a maroon color, gets a little bit darker in the summer. Here we have some ground covers, nice contrast between the kind of a silver blue color here and more of a greenish color over there. This particular one, let's see, Antenaria silver carpet. It slowly spreads. I've tried to cut it and divide a little bit and get it started other places. It's kind of hard to get started, but I do have it started one other place in the garden. Okay, over here, this one big rock, the 7-ton rock, if I had it just there by itself, might look a little bit artificial. So I have some of these other smaller rocks around it and providing planting places for various rock garden alpine plants. The cactus on this rock came with the rock. That's the one plant that came with it. The rest I've planted. Now you'll see a small pond here. Normally I have a little waterfall, but unfortunately the pump quit on me a few days ago. I have another pump on order, but the water would come kind of from back underneath there, and then a waterfall into that pond and just recirculate. I was able to get the water supply from on top. Had to drill a hole through the rock about that far to finally get the pipe so the water would come out there. Actually a hidden area, you can't actually see the source of the water, but the pump is in there that draws the water from the pond, and then a pipe goes clear around, and the pipe is hidden underneath all these plants to finally where it goes down through the rock.